Hi, I'm Mel,
And I'm Janelle.
and this is the Murder Mamas. Hello,
Hello.
welcome.
Welcome.
We are back.
We're back.
Yes, it's been a couple of weeks.
Has it?
Yeah, because I figured we release on Tuesday, but we also record on Tuesday. So,
Okay.
like, the every other week thing made it 2 weeks without an episode, and then this will be the third week that we have an episode.
Oh,
But then Connor's going to start baseball soon, so I don't know what days he's going to be playing. So,
all
we'll get
right.
there. We're a little off track.
It's just
Our
for
numbers
us.
dipped a little bit, so we'll get there. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's okay. So today we're going to be talking about American Murder, Laci Peterson.
why did you hesitate on her name?
I don't know. It's written right here in front of me. Big bold letters.
And I think it's like one of the most notable
Oh,
cases,
sure.
in
Yeah.
the recent
Yeah.
maybe 30 years
Yeah,
or
I would think
something.
people know about this.
But this particular series,
Yeah, this
docu-series,
docuseries. Three
uh,
episodes.
3 episodes, about an hour each. They're
Yeah.
on Netflix.
Yep.
It covers the whole case
Yeah.
from the beginning
Mm-hmm.
to the end.
And I think isn't there something out with just Scott Peterson? Or is there not I know he came into the news because they were like re-looking at the case, and there's a lot of people who believe that he didn't do it. And so there was like
They
more evidence coming out, but
not very smart,
I don't,
or
I don't know. I don't know how they couldn't believe, but like I heard a lot of maybe like a year ago or something it came
oh, I don't remember hearing anything
you know,
about that.
like he was gonna have like he got brought
Like an
up and
appeal
yeah,
trial or
yeah.
something. I mean, I'm sure he's appealing
Oh,
it.
I'm
They all
sure
do,
they do.
but
But there was like a lot of people who were like, no, he didn't do it. Like, how
so
could
then
he have
who
done
do
it?
they think did it?
The people, the guys that were in the neighborhood robbing the people across the street. Yeah. Anyway, let's,
I I have a hard time with that theory
yeah.
because I feel like there's such a caliber of like difference between like a petty thief
Yeah.
fueling a drug habit and like let's like they didn't even enter the Petersons' home.
No.
Had they entered their home, I'd be like, okay, like maybe I could understand that
Right.
things got out of hand. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I could extend that belief, but they weren't even at their house.
No.
So I'm supposed to believe that these like two random people just saw this very pregnant woman and were
Right.
like, oh, let's grab her.
Yeah.
Like,
I
nah.
don't know.
I think the much more plausible thing is that he is a fucking guilty.
Right. Because when he found out his girlfriend had a kid, he was like, "Oh, that's enough for me." And I was like, "Ooh, right there, that's a
And I also have to say, we're jumping ahead, but
yeah."
I really appreciate it. I didn't realize like I was only 12
Oh, really?
ish when this happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm 10 years younger than
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
9 years younger than you. So I was like 12 when this happened, and I remember seeing a lot of this case like on the
It
news.
was everywhere.
And I also remember when he was arrested finally, because it was in San Diego, and I lived in San Diego at the time. And me being like the most self-centered little girl was like, what if he kills me?
Like,
Like what?
oh shit. Yep.
But like I remember thinking that as like a
Sure.
fear, like, oh no, like he's in the area. It's a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
So I remember those aspects of it, but I don't. My mom used to get the Inquirer when I was little
Nice.
for my grandma. And so I remember seeing things about the girlfriend, but only from that viewpoint
Right.
and being like 12
Yeah.
and not understanding
Sure.
the world.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated the aspects of this docuseries where she got to talk and got to discuss and like show all of her contributions to kind of like helping move the case along.
Yeah.
And I come, looking back now as an adult, I'm like, wow, she was brutally like mischaracterized
Oh
by
yeah.
the media. And she is like such a brave and like strong person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was my take on that.
Yeah. It's true.
Very long-winded.
Thank you for that.
But
Yeah. So we start off and she's missing. Like, it's just like her, what?
well, and like you say she's missing, but like she goes missing on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Which just sort of I think immediately draws attention.
Yeah. And she's pregnant.
8 months pregnant.
8 months
not like
pregnant.
freshly pregnant.
Right. 8
Like,
months pregnant. So that's like a lot.
could have the baby.
At any time.
Pregnant.
Yeah. And so I thought it was great. She had friends that were like on it. Like they came together, they made posters, they made flyers, they went out and put everything out there. I was like, damn, I don't even know that many people. Like Janelle would be like,
there.
Mel's missing.
Mel's missing. What does she look like? She's wearing all black.
She's wearing all black. And even if she changes, she'll still be in all black.
Well, and it opens up like we're listening to a voicemail that her mom has left for him, where she's saying like, Scott, like I need to understand the event. Like what happened at 8:30 in the morning?
Yeah.
What happened at 10? Like what happened? I need to understand what happened before she goes missing.
Yeah. She wants to know like what Lacey's what she was feeling. Like, was she angry at something? Was she sad? Was she okay? Like, something, she just wanted to understand where her daughter was.
Yeah. And then I thought there was like right at the beginning, there's like a talking head who says that femicide is like is the leading cause of death for pregnant women.
Yeah.
And in my head, when I saw that, I was like, that's not fucking true.
I said that too.
And then I Googled it, and it absolutely is true.
That's horrifying.
Horrifying. That and like the immediate postpartum period.
Yeah. I know.
Why?
I don't know. Because men get scared.
Do you think that's it?
Yes.
Really?
Well, who else is going to kill it? A friend? Friend's going to be like, oh my God, you had a baby. I'm going to kill you. No, it's the fucking partner.
But do you think they're scared, or do you think it's like...
Or they're pissed,
they're like, I actually don't want to be tied to this anymore.
Or that.
Like, I really think it's that.
It's
like,
probably that. Yeah.
Which, like, just break up?
Yeah, move along. Bye. I'll send you a check. Like...
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know either. And it's like, you're not just killing one person, you're killing two. And you're killing an infant or a fetus. Like,
you're not even killing just like a like you're killing your child.
Yeah, which is really weird to me.
How you could do that. I guess men don't connect with babies while you're
I don't think they do.
the same way women do. So
no, they don't, for sure.
Anyhow.
Yeah. So Sharon is Lacey's mom, and Scott is Lacey's husband, just so well, I don't know. I mean, some people might not know about this case.
Okay.
That's what I have written down in my notes at this point.
So then we sort of get like the rough timeline of the day Lacey went missing.
Right.
Which again is Christmas Eve. Which is such a red flag to me because they're also spending the entire day apart.
Right.
And I thought that was really strange. I'm like...
Well, she was going to host Christmas Eve, right? And then they go to their parents for Christmas Day. So she was supposedly going to run errands and get ready for Christmas Eve.
But like,
he wasn't involved in any of that.
Don't you think like a reasonable person?
Yes.
Husband, spouse, supporter would be like, hey, actually, let me go out and run all these errands on Christmas Eve, and you can stay home because you were 8 months pregnant, and just fucking chill.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or just set out the party, like do
you
little
get
things.
The house ready, and I'll get all the other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just very strange to me, that shows a lot about the dynamic of the relationship, just in that one little piece.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you go do all the fucking labor, and I'm going to take this boat no one knows about.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go, like, fish.
Well, he was going to go golfing, but then it was too cold to golf. And I'm like, wouldn't it be too cold to go boating? I think it'd be more cold on the water.
The logic does not logic.
No, it doesn't.
I had the same thought. I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
It's too cold to golf, but you're fine being in a boat?
Yeah.
90 miles away from your house?
Right.
Stuffs.
Yeah.
All around.
I think, so we find out Laci wasn't going to have a party, right? Because she ended up at her friend's house.
No, that was like a Christmas party.
Oh,
like,
a
not
different
just
day.
like hosting.
Oh, okay.
Like, she used to have like a huge Christmas party with like friends and family and stuff.
Okay.
But we don't find that out till like
Okay.
So then we find out from the timeline of events that they wake up in the morning. Well, Scott wakes up in the morning about 9:30 or something, and he's watches Martha Stewart with Laci.
Yep.
Because that was her favorite program.
Yeah.
And then he says he leaves to go to his office. He goes to his office workshop. He checks some emails and responds to one email.
Yeah.
He made the distinction. It was one email. And then he loads up his boat and he goes out to the Berkeley Marina, which again is 90 miles. A long distance.
That's a long distance for an 8-month pregnant wife to have at home. Like, she could go into labor anytime, and then you're like an hour and a half away.
It's just like a long distance for we'll get there. He loads up his boat, he goes to the marina, and then he's like out on the water fishing.
Yeah.
With his silver lure.
Right.
That's still in the package.
Still in the package when he gets home, and yeah.
So he's like, yeah, we'll go. Like, I was fishing, and then I come back like an hour and a half later. So you fished for an hour.
Yeah.
You drove an hour, 3 hours round trip to fish for 1 hour.
Yeah.
We're supposed to believe that.
Yeah, and then all his stuff was still in the bag. Yeah.
So,
but he did have a ticket.
Yes. So he gets home from there, and he sees their dog in their like front courtyard, sort of like their house had like a gate, and then there's some area, and then the front door.
Yeah.
So the dog is there and leashed.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, weird.
Yeah.
Why would the dog be out?
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, not that weird. Opens the door, goes inside, takes a shower, changes his clothes, washes his clothes.
Yeah.
And then makes a sandwich.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was a sandwich. And then calls her mom.
Yeah.
And goes, Laci's missing.
Right.
I don't care what anyone says. Those are not the actions of an innocent person.
No. Because wouldn't you want to walk in and find her first before you take a shower?
Yeah.
And be like, hey, why is the dog out there? Or did you know the dog was out front? Like, should we bring him in? Or hey, Laci, are you here? Are you okay? Like,
hey, are you okay?
Where are you?
Hey, do you want to hear about the fishing trip? Like, I want to talk about fishing.
Yeah.
I want to say hi and give you a kiss because you're my wife and I love you. I don't know.
Something.
There's a few options there.
Yeah.
But then he's like, doesn't call the police. He just calls the mom.
Yeah.
And is like, oh, Laci's missing. And then starts calling all of her friends and is like, Laci's missing. Laci's missing. Laci's missing. Like, willing to tell everyone Laci's missing.
Yeah. Was this before cell phones?
No, they had cell phones because remember he leaves the Berkeley Marina. Sorry, I didn't mention this. Yep. And he calls Laci's phone and he leaves for the voicemail. That's like, oh, hey, I love you. I'm not going to be able to get the gift basket for Papa. Yeah. Can you pick it up from blah, blah, blah farms? I'm like, so you're giving your 8-month pregnant wife another fucking errand? If anything, ooh, I was about to say something. I didn't say it. I'm glad I kept it.
Yep.
Because it was going to sound bad.
Yeah.
But that is not a man to have to have a baby with.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Mm-mm.
That's not a partner. That's not a parent. That's not a father.
No.
That is a bitch.
Yeah.
Anyways, very passionate. So her mom is like, okay, have you called the police? And he's like, no, I called you first.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, maybe call the fucking police.
Right.
So he does. He calls the police and he's like, my wife is missing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very sad.
Yeah. And he gets introduced to a detective who's like now working on her case.
Yes. So her friends, though, and family, like, immediately jump in.
Immediately.
They make so many flyers, so many, they're canvassing her entire neighborhood, like,
They knew she was going for a walk, and they had asked people.
which I think is weird too, because how did you know she was going for a walk?
I think she probably told Scott, like, hey, I'm gonna, like, what are you doing today? I'm gonna go for a walk and do this or something. I think because they knew she was going for a walk.
But I don't know.
So my point being is they like rerouted to where she would walk because they had a little park area that she would take their dog. It was like one street over or something.
That's right. Her mom was like, have you checked the park?
Right.
And he was like, no.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, you call the police and I'll go check the park.
Yeah. Like that would be the first place I'd check if the dog came home with his leash on.
Also, very nice of the neighbor to put the dog inside.
Yes. I've done that many times. If it was the right house, I don't know. I did put a dog in behind a gate. Here you go.
There's a dog behind your gate.
I think it's yours. I don't know. But yeah. And then they start passing out the flyers. And guess who wasn't a part of that?
Scott.
Yeah.
Just
What
absolutely.
was he doing? Sitting inside the house like twiddle-dee, twiddle-dum? Like, I don't understand. All these people are out there, and he wasn't involved.
Yeah. Which is very strange. And it also seems like, why would he be involved if he already knew the outcome?
Right.
So then we meet the detective who starts working on the case. The homicide. No. Was he a homicide detective?
I don't know.
No, he was just a detective.
Yeah.
I think it was like a missing case detective.
Probably.
We meet him, and he comes and he questions Scott. And he's like, hey, like, what's going on? And he's like, I need to clear you.
Yeah. Because
so that I can look for other people.
Right.
Like, I need to clear you. And Scott's not giving a ton of answers, but he's also like immediately very comfortable with the detective.
Yeah.
He mentions that they're on a first name basis.
Yeah, that's through my notes. Like they're on the first name basis.
Well, not them, but Scott.
Yeah.
Just like
Scott
assumed.
Yeah. Not calling him detective, just calling him by his name.
Like sir or anything. Just like, hey, Bill.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I forget. I didn't write that down.
But like.
Yeah.
Which.
Very calm.
Very calm, very cool, very collected, very rehearsed.
Yeah. Maybe.
So he walks him through the house and is like, yeah, her purse is here, her wallet's here, her cell phone's here, everything's here. She's not here. And he's like, okay, let's walk through the timeline of events. So then Scott gives him the timeline of events that we've already said.
Yep.
And
he wants to look inside Scott's car.
Yes. So then I also love that the detective was like, yeah, Scott gave me everything. And then he's like, here's my voting, like immediately. It's like, here's the receipt for where I was.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I didn't ask, but right? Okay.
Yeah. So in Scott's car, they find a tarp. And he says 3 large umbrellas. Now, not umbrellas that you would use to, like, cover with rain, but, like, backyard umbrellas.
Yeah, like for tables.
For tables and stuff. And the ticket and everything is still, like, everything that he bought at the bait shop was still in the same packaging. Like, it hadn't been opened. So he kind of realized, like, okay, so you went fishing and you bought all this stuff, but you didn't open any of it?
Yeah, and then he's like, hey, can we go look at your shop?
Right.
Like.
Yeah.
And he's like,
I think
yeah.
his shop was in like a
It was
storage
like a
unit.
storage
Yeah.
unit, like warehouse kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. So he was a fertilizer salesman. I'm like, didn't realize that was even a job.
Right.
But I guess.
Anything could be a job, you know. Try hard enough.
Did you watch me? No 911? Yeah?
Not like, yeah, like when it was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Nick Swartzen's character on the roller skates.
Yeah.
And
He's the best.
when he goes, do you have a job? Like, I think Officer Dingle asked him, like, do you have a job? And he goes, no, yeah. And they're like, no, you don't. And he goes, a hand job's still a job.
It is. It's a job. It's in the name.
That always cracks me up.
Yeah.
And so then they're like looking around in there and they take some pictures and they see these like homemade anchors.
Mm-hmm.
So he did have a homemade anchor in the boat, but they notice that it looks like he made more than one anchor.
Right.
And they ask him about it and he's like, no, just the one.
Just the one.
And they're like, okay. They don't really have a lot to go on. So they're like, all right. And then the family sets up like a command center and it starts to get more and more media traction because it is, again, Christmas Eve and Christmas. And it's just like adds to that like salaciousness.
And
I don't really
she's
know.
8 months pregnant.
Yeah. And everyone's involved. And then we get to find out like who Laci is.
Yeah.
And if there's an embodiment of like she lights up the room,
Right.
it is her.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody loved her.
And she just is like this tiny, beautiful, like you can feel the kindness and like the warmth.
Yeah.
Just by looking at like a photo of her. Like you can tell that when people are like, everyone just gravitated to her.
Yeah.
Like you can almost like feel the gravitational pull looking at a picture of her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I feel whenever I see like a picture of her.
Yeah.
Like,
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I get it.
Yeah.
We find out like a lot about Laci, Laci's childhood. She's an older sister. She has a younger brother.
Yeah.
There's just the two kids. Her parents got divorced when she was fairly young, but her mom and her stepdad had been together for like a very long time, and she was just like, I don't know, like just one of those people. She had like really good friends that she had been friends with her whole life, and then she goes off to college, and this is like while they're talking about like the backstory.
Yeah.
She goes off to college, and this is where she meets Scott.
Yeah.
Is when they're both in college together. And then we also learn about Scott. So, like, Scott is a handsome man.
Yeah.
He's seemingly very charming. He's a salesman.
Yeah.
So, you know.
They know how to do it.
Able to, like, communicate and talk to people and do all of those sort of, like, people skills. He grows up, he is from San Diego, and he had his parents each had children from different marriages, so he has like a lot of half siblings, and he is the only kid that is both from the mom and the dad.
Yeah.
And so they all said, and he's the youngest. Yeah. So they all said, like, he was the favorite. He could do no wrong.
Yeah, his parents totally believe he didn't do anything wrong. Like, they were like, Scott wouldn't do this. He is not like that. He wouldn't hurt anybody. They believe in him.
They shouldn't.
Well, they do.
And then we learned that, like, he goes up and he's in college. And I think they're at Cal Poly or something. Yeah. And she meets him because he was working at like a diner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
and she had written her phone number on the back of like a napkin, and he threw it away,
Right.
not knowing. And I'm like, man, Laci, if only you could have let that lie,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And just moved on.
Yeah.
But
Didn't.
she goes back in and they meet, and then they get together, and her friend describes it as what we would now call love bombing.
Right.
He sort of takes her on like a vacation to Mexico.
Yeah.
He's buying her a lot of gifts and presents and showing her how special she is and treating her the way that she deserves to be treated, that anyone deserves to be treated, you know? But really, it's just love bombing.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And I think, I want to say, like, obviously he fell for her at that point in time. And I'm thinking he loved her, I mean, while they were married and everything. He just got jealous when she got pregnant, I think. And didn't want a child, wasn't ready for a child yet.
Yeah.
I think they'd still be together if there was no child.
Do you really think that's it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I think the child changed them somehow.
Yeah, can we like pin that and go back to it? Because there's I believe it's the third episode or like the end of the second episode, the mom talks about, like, there's some talk about like their journey to becoming parents. Right. And I want to get there.
Okay.
But so then he's like love bombing her, and he's doing all of these things, and then they drive down to San Diego, and she meets all of his family for the first time. And she only has one sibling.
Yeah.
And like
a lot.
Is thrown into this family that's like extended, and there's a ton of people.
Yeah.
And I think they said she was like very overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm sure. And if you're not used to that.
Made me laugh because I have so many siblings. Yeah. And like my family environment is so chaotic with so many people and like talking, and it's loud. And I remember my sister growing up had a friend who had one sister, and she would come to our house and look like she was living through Vietnam. Like, just like...
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, like catatonic almost. Yeah. Because it was so overstimulating for her.
And I'm an only child. So like, yeah, I know how quiet it can be like on Christmas when there's two parents and a kid. Like, that's it. Yeah.
You know,
it's a lot if you have multiple, because then it's not just your siblings, it's their husbands, their kids, their wives. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like 35 people at this point.
That's a lot.
If I'm like, hey, I want to get together with my family, it's 35 people.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
If we get together with Auntie's parents, it's like 10. There's 10 of us. That's it. Like, if my family and his family, we come together, 10. 10 people. And that's it.
Oh, no.
So, like, it's very, like, calm and collected.
Well, and if we still talked to Chris's family, that's like a whole nother. Yeah, he has half siblings and all kinds of stuff. Like, that would be easily like 70 people.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't imagine.
Insanity. It's so loud. So many voices. Yeah. So much talking.
I would just be like, okay, bye.
Gotta go.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Can't be here.
My favorite is when my dad's done having people at his house. He just like sits down in his living room and turns the TV on really loud.
Time to go. Watching my show.
While everyone's around, just pure chaos, like talking. And he just like sits down and I'm done. It cracks me up. He still does that to this day. He's been doing it my entire life.
That's funny.
Anyways, so she meets his whole family, and his family says like Laci is just like the sweetest, cutest thing ever, and we loved her. Like, she was clearly overwhelmed with our family dynamic, but like we loved her.
Yeah.
And they really did like accept her.
Yeah.
And then we learn about the proposal. So he proposes to her in their living room. Mm-hmm. I think the living room of like her family's house. And her mom mentions like it was very strange because the proposal was so mild.
Right.
When all of the other things he had been doing and like showing her were so grandiose.
Yeah.
It was like a very interesting like juxtaposition of these behaviors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is really interesting.
That is. Yeah.
Was it like, okay, now I know I got it, so I don't have to,
not have to
do it anymore?
Right.
Or was it not, like, was there no malice in it, you know?
Right.
She obviously says yes, and then they get married in 97?
96 or 97, yeah.
I think it was like 97.
Okay.
So at the time of her disappearance in 2002?
2002?
In 2002, they had been married for 5 years?
Yeah.
They get married, and then from getting married, they move to a place, Morro Bay.
Yes.
I don't know where that is.
I've heard of it.
They move to Morro Bay, and she doesn't have like the community that she had in Modesto. Mm-hmm. And so she's like not as happy as she was there.
Yeah.
And she tells Scott, like, I want to move back to Modesto. And Scott's like, okay, like we can do that. Yeah. So then they move back to Modesto, and they have a very comfortable life.
Yeah.
So being a fertilizer salesman.
Shit. Who knew?
She had a Louis Vuitton purse.
Yeah.
They had a nice house.
Yeah.
They clearly took care of their house. Like, even the detectives, like, these are people who loved their things and their home, and they valued it and took care of it. It was, like, tidy and clean, and everything had a place, and it was very well cared for. You could tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is sort of, like, that's the whole backstory up to where they are now.
Yeah.
Now they're just sort of, like, living with their friends. She loved to host and entertain and do all of these things. And then we're back at like present day where they're still looking for Laci and like she's continuing to be missing.
Yeah.
And everyone's getting more desperate, more concerned, more frantic, more all of these things because it's going like days.
Yeah.
And she's nowhere.
Yeah.
And Scott is unbothered.
Right.
To everybody else.
Yeah.
That's how they interpret his behavior.
Yeah.
Is that he doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
He will not talk to the media.
Nope. No. Yeah.
Why?
Why not? Yeah. You're her husband.
Yeah. Like her friends are pleading, like, Laci, please come home.
Yeah.
And he's straight up refusing.
Yeah.
He's not really helping doing like the canvassing, and when he does, he's like laughing and joking.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie Gone Girl?
Yeah.
I really feel like that's what this book is based on.
Yeah.
Except for like
the main
the main part. But like the behavior of Ben Affleck's character. I'm like, am I watching like what is this?
Yeah.
And then so while all of this is happening, the police are still looking and they're investigating all of these things. And as Mel mentioned earlier, they find out that there is a burglary that happened to their neighbors, which they don't discover until the neighbors get home on the 27th.
Yeah.
And so the neighbors had left on the 24th about 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And arrived back home while there's like this huge police presence on their street.
Right.
And they go outside and they're like, hey, someone like robbed our house.
Yeah.
And there's no connection for a long time. Well, there's no connection at all in my opinion.
Yeah.
But they don't even sort of like, I don't know. Like it's sort of like always on the back of their mind, but it's not a main point to them. But they're just like trying to understand and figure out what happened. And they're also trying to get Scott to say that he's not, like, to prove that he's innocent, basically.
Right. Give me something.
He denies taking the polygraph test. First, he says he would.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, I'm not going to. And part of me is like, okay. Like, you shouldn't.
You shouldn't
because
take
it's
one.
really not like science.
It's not.
And they'll just.
I know it makes you look bad to like the general public, but it's not something to base off of.
Yeah. Like, it does not prove innocence or guilt, in my opinion.
At all, yeah.
So Scott first says he would, and then he's like, no, actually, I'm not going to do that. And the police continue to question him. So he won't take the polygraph test. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, okay, like, we can't force you.
Yeah.
They also, while they're getting increasingly suspicious of him, there's no evidence. Like, there's nothing.
Nothing.
And they're like, hey, do you think we could, like, I don't know, fingerprint your house just to see if there's, like, any other fingerprints in here? And he's like, yeah. So he leaves for a few days for them to, like, process his house. They find nothing out of the ordinary, nothing suspicious. Do they find something in the garage or no?
I don't think so. No. I don't have that written down.
They do go back and they check his boat and, like, the office again. And then they sort of put together.
Oh, I have.
Yeah, so they fingerprint the house, and then they're like, let's go check the boat again.
Yeah.
And then in the boat, they find some, like, so in the workshop, they find evidence that he made at least 5 different homemade anchors, like bucket anchors.
Right.
There was only one in the boat.
Yeah.
And they find, the only other thing they really find in the boat is needle nose pliers that have a long, like, black hair wrapped around them.
Right.
And then they find, like, this timeline of Laci, or of Scott's behavior in the time leading up to her disappearance. And they're like, this kind of is weird.
Yeah.
So he buys the boat on December 9th. And he doesn't tell anyone.
Nobody knows about the boat.
That he's bought a boat.
Yeah.
Like, first off, it's kind of a big purchase to, like, not tell your wife about.
Right.
And then when his mother-in-law questions him, like, why didn't you tell us about the boat?
Yeah.
He's like, I wanted to surprise Ron, Laci's stepdad.
Yeah.
She's like,
why?
Why? Like, well, that doesn't even make sense. Like, it wasn't a gift for him.
Right.
Like, it's your boat.
Yeah.
Why? What? Surprise him?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So they're like, that doesn't make sense. And then they find that he like gets a fishing license. And so they're like, okay, so why are you, like, doing these things leading up to the day she goes missing, where it's the first time you take your boat out?
Right.
But also, like, maybe you're going to go golfing that day.
Right.
You know, like, it's just
weird.
Very strange. And he like can't really explain any of it.
No, he doesn't do a very good job.
No, he doesn't give them anything.
Nothing.
He won't talk to the media. Like, he won't go on any shows. He won't do anything.
Yeah.
And he's just being, like, really aloof and, like, unhelpful.
Yes.
I think is the best way. Like, he's not actively blocking anything, but he is not helping.
Yeah.
He's not desperate. He's not trying anything. And it's just very strange. But then the more time she's missing, the more the case is, like, picking up all of this coverage. So now it's getting, like, national news coverage. Yeah. And then they get a phone call at the, like, I don't know, the police department.
Yeah.
I think just gets a phone call.
Yeah.
And the detective happened to be walking by, like, the dispatcher who was getting the phone call. And the caller says, like, Scott Peterson is my boyfriend. Yeah. And they're like, what? And so the detective actually picks up the phone and is like, don't tell Scott that you're talking to us, and we will be in Fresno. Stay where you are.
Right.
And they immediately leave to go to Fresno to question her.
And her name is Amber Fry.
That's when we meet Amber Fry.
Yeah.
And Amber Fry is Scott Peterson's girlfriend.
Yeah.
She did not know that Scott Peterson was married.
No, she didn't know any of this.
She never knew he was married.
No.
She was a single mom living in Fresno.
Yep.
And
he traveled a lot up and down that corridor. So like for work. So he would tell Laci, I'm going here, and he would actually be at Amber's house.
Correct.
Yeah.
And she says, I met him through like a friend in the end of November.
Yeah.
So like you blew your fucking life up for someone you had known for 3 weeks?
Right. Yeah.
Is that not fucking crazy?
That is crazy. They seem to be like close though for
but
that.
He was love bombing her.
Yeah, that's true. Doing the same thing. Yeah. And she's a single mom, so why wouldn't you like that? Like, you're getting attention. And, yeah.
I mean, anyone likes that.
Yeah.
Anyone likes attention. So we hear from Amber, like, how they met and how he said he'd never been married. He never wanted to be married. Like, she literally had no idea about Laci. And there's, like, a photo of them at her work Christmas party that took place on December. What was it? I think it was like December 12th or something.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a picture of him taking Amber to this work event, and then we're seeing a picture of Laci, 8 months pregnant, sitting at her friend's Christmas party because she didn't have her own because he was traveling so much for work.
Yeah.
By herself.
Yeah.
And it's like, just leave.
Right.
Like.
Yeah. I don't understand.
Just leave. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So then the whole family finds out. Well, actually, no. The whole family doesn't find out about Amber. The cops are like, don't tell him that we know anything.
They want to put a wire on her.
And they do. They put a wire on her phone, and she helps the cops so much. She is...
They said she was like a natural. Like, they had...
Zero training.
Zero anything. And she just came up and did it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she maintains this relationship with Scott. Mind you, we're in like, I want to say no, we're not. We're still in the first few days.
Yeah.
Because Scott is fully lying to her.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot. And he's telling her, like, the craziest call that I listened to was the one on New Year's Eve where he says he's traveling in Paris.
Yes.
And he's like, I'm watching from the Eiffel Tower. I can't hear you. And she's pretending like she doesn't know it's fucking bullshit.
Right.
And she's doing such a good job.
And he's actually at a memorial for Laci.
Yes. And he's still coming to her like house at that point, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
And so, who got the information? Someone finds out. Like, I wanted to say it was the Inquirer.
Maybe.
They find out about her, and they're like, we're going to publish this story, and, like, we don't really care.
Right.
And so then the police are like, okay.
Yeah.
And they tell the family, because up to then, the family didn't know.
Right.
And I think this was in January.
Yeah.
And her family is like obviously devastated.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And Scott is like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So they tell the families, and now it's out and it's in the media. And Amber does like a press conference where I wish we could like link it.
Yeah.
Because she is like so genuine and so brave and so just like,
I'll tell you anything you need to know.
yeah, like I like very cooperative, very much an open book, and very much, I don't know, like everything.
Yeah.
So the police begin questioning her like a lot, and they talk about a timeline with her that really lines up with some of his behavior.
Sure.
So I'm trying to like mentally categorize it. So when Amber and Scott were dating, there was like this other person who knew Scott who had mentioned Scott had a wife.
Right.
And this was December something.
Yeah.
And so Amber confronts Scott and she's like, so-and-so said you're married. Like,
what's up?
What's up? I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to do that to anyone in marriage. Like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to do this. He's like, can I come see you?
Yeah.
And he shows up, and this is on December 10th. He bought a boat.
Yep.
It's December 9th. It's the same day he bought the boat.
Yeah.
He shows up to Amber, and he's like,
I was married,
but I lost my wife.
Yeah.
And she's like, you lost your what? Like, what does that mean?
Right.
And he's like, she got in an accident.
Car accident.
She got in an accident and she died and da-da-da. And like, I'm not married anymore, even though this person who knows me just said I was. Like, I'm actually not. I've not, like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
And she's like, she has no reason to not believe him.
Yeah. Why would she?
So she feels actually like sympathy. Yeah. She's like, wow, this poor man who's like grieving. And she's like, why did you lie about being married? He's like, I don't know. Yeah. I actually don't remember what he actually said, but it was essentially like, he made up some bullshit about how he thought she wouldn't want her, or it was like too fresh or something. I don't fucking remember. Yeah. Whatever you think a narcissist would tell you, that's what he said. Yep.
Pretty much.
And she's like, okay, like, I guess, like, I can forgive you for that. Yeah. And then he shows up, he shows up a few days later for that work party with, like, 3 dozen red roses. Yeah. Like, just love bombing the fuck out of her. Yeah. So, but then the police are, okay, so we're learning that he's telling you that he doesn't have a wife. Right. When you're the same day. Yeah. Like, he's already lost her. Like, this plan is in motion. Right. That's what the police say. Yeah. So yeah. Amber continues to help them. Which Scott continues to fucking talk to her about stuff. I'm like,
so weird.
What? Yeah. But she continues to help them, and finally, like, Scott calls her and is like, I don't remember what he says, but she basically is like, I think it's best if we don't talk anymore until this is like
blown over.
Until this is resolved.
Resolved, yeah.
Is what she says. Yeah. And he's like, I agree. I'm gonna miss you. And like almost sounds like he's tearing up. Yeah. And she just goes, okay. Yeah. And she's also rightfully upset that she's been lied to too. You know, like, this is someone that she's like, wow, I really like this guy. Like, maybe this will be something. Like, who knows? Yeah. And again, like, it's just so wild to me that he just blew up his entire fucking life.
Yeah, it's weird.
Over someone he knew for like a few weeks. Yeah. And I'm like, did he do it because he got caught in the lie? Or did he do it because, like, he didn't ever actually want kids?
He never wanted kids.
So then that's when we hear a little bit about, like, their journey to becoming parents. Yeah. So Laci wanted kids, and initially they had a conversation, and he was like, no, like, I don't want kids. And she had told her mom, like, Scott doesn't want kids. Yeah. I'm like, okay, why are we having this conversation like years into being married? Right. This is a before we're married kind of conversation. Yeah. And And then, like, 6 months later or something, she called and was like, we're pregnant.
Yeah.
And her mom was like, I thought Scott didn't want kids. And she was like, yeah, he changed his mind.
Yeah.
Like, did he change his mind, or did he think you would leave him?
Right.
And, like, you probably would have, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Her friends were so sweet too.
Yeah.
And they had been friends for like forever.
Forever, yeah.
And they talk about how Laci had like she had been trying to get pregnant for a while, and it was unsuccessful. And how she had hosted one of them like a baby shower.
Yeah.
And then waited until the day after the baby shower to announce that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And how thrilled they all were for her.
Yeah.
And all of that. And then
yeah, which brings us back to Amber, because remember they talked about having kids, and he was like, no, your daughter is enough for me. Like, I don't want any more.
which to me is so crazy too. Like,
Right.
you're going for someone who already has a kid.
Has a
if
kid.
you don't want kids, why
Yeah.
why are you being with someone who has a kid? That's why I don't get it. That's why I don't think it was because she had a baby. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And you know what's so sad? Her mom says, when they find out about Amber, her mom says, yeah, he didn't have to kill her though.
Yeah.
Like, that's her first thought.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of people's first thought.
Yeah, for sure.
So then the police focus they're like they're ruling it like they start it as like a homicide investigation at this point. Like, they're pretty convinced that they have enough evidence, and that not that they have enough evidence, but that they have enough suspicion that there's foul play.
Yeah.
It's been over a month at this point, I think.
Right.
And they do like this huge canvassing on the water, searching for her. And the detective talks about how Scott, they were like tracking his car, by the way. The detective talks about how Scott is like driving and like watching them.
Yeah.
And then leaving.
Yeah.
And then like watching them and then leaving. And it's almost.
He wants to see if they found anything.
Well, it's almost as if he wants to see if they're even looking in the area that they should be. And then they're not. And he's like, okay, like I can breathe again. But then he goes back to it.
Right.
And so they think that they found something. And they're telling the family, like, we may have found something. So they're all preparing for it.
Yeah.
That's a fucking anchor.
Yeah.
Because it's on sonar.
Right.
So they don't find anything during that initial search. And then they still are just kind of like working the case and trying to figure all of this out. And nothing, like, he's not in jail.
Yeah. Nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. Him and Amber aren't speaking anymore. Her family publicly is like, we do not back Scott.
No.
And for weeks, they had been. His family still believes him.
Yeah.
And then he like weirdly ramps up his own efforts. So he like goes to LA and like creates a command center to try and find her because maybe she's down here. And he starts doing like these media interviews.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
He like invites them into his house, but he's like very specific and they have to take their shoes off and like, all that shit. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but the second time they look at his house when they have a warrant, they talk about how the house was like so messy and there was no care for it.
Right.
Like he didn't actually give a shit. And especially the nursery, like the crib is like messy and there's like pillows and like he didn't give a shit. He was not preserving any of that.
No.
Which I think is just important to mention.
Right.
So they're kind of just like in this little pattern of like waiting and then they find a fetus on shore.
Yeah.
And then they find her torso.
Yeah.
And so Laci's body and Connor,
Yeah.
that's the baby's name, are discovered fairly close to where he was fishing
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah.
and they arrest him on murder charges for both of them. And then he goes to jail and he waits for his trial. And then we get to the trial. And at the trial, and his family hires like a very well-known, high-powered attorney.
Sure.
And Amber gets an attorney. Gloria Allred. Pro bono. Which I thought was really nice of her to like protect Amber.
It was just, murdered in the media, it feels like. I mean, they were ruthless. They were brutal to her. Like, she didn't do anything, and they made it seem like she was, a part of this, almost.
She did more than she ever should have.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I meant. But, like, she did more than she needed to.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't have to tap her phone.
No.
She could have told Scott. Like, she could have done so many, like, bad things. And she did everything. She did more to find and help Laci than her own fucking husband did.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, you can tell that she genuinely felt really bad that she was in someone's marriage. And I really liked how after her first press conference where she, like, says, I'm sorry, and like I'm so sorry for your family, like I want to do anything I can to help. Her friends go up and they like all thank her and tell her how brave she was. Like I thought that was really, like, it just shows the character of all of those women. So then the trial happens and it's of course like a media circus.
Insane.
It's insane. It's like a trial. I don't know. They present all of the evidence. Not the defendants, the prosecutors. I don't remember which one it was. They say that, like, they create their timeline of events. So what they say happened is that Scott decided he was like done. And he strangled and or choked Laci because one, he seems like the kind of motherfucker who would do that. And two, it's very clean. So so he does that. They say that he dragged her body through their house and there's one rug that was a little bit like off center from that first time the police went through that first day. From that first day. And so they say, like, he dragged her out there, put her in the back of the truck, covered her. She's also like 5 feet tall.
Yeah, she's not very big.
She's very tiny. And weighs like, I don't know, maybe 120 pounds or something. Put her in the back of the truck, cover her with those big umbrellas, and then cover the umbrellas with the tarp. That's what they say he did. And then he drives to the shop, picks up his boat, goes out to the marina, attaches some anchors to her body, and drops her down into the bay. I think that sounds very plausible.
For sure.
And so did the jury. Because they all agree that is what happened. And Scott gets convicted of both of their murders. And now he is in prison for life. And he is, as we mentioned earlier, working on appealing that. And apparently some people think that he is not guilty. I am not one of those people.
No, I think he's guilty.
And if you want to email us and tell me that he is not guilty, I don't want to read that email. So don't read that.
I'll read it.
You can. That's fine. Don't send it to me. I'm not interested in hearing about that. Because I genuinely don't think there's anyone else would do it.
No.
I don't think there's some mastermind who got away with this.
No.
I just don't believe that anyone else had a motive to do this but him, because he didn't want to be tied to someone. And I think that he's a fucking coward because all he had to do was say, like, I want to leave you. And I get the feeling that Laci would have been like, okay. Like that. It is what it is. So. I don't know Laci, but I feel that.
It probably is.
she would have been fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
She had a really strong support system,
Yes,
I think.
she
So
did.
even if she was pregnant, I think she knows that her mom, her stepdad,
Yeah.
her friends, like they would have all loved her and supported her.
100%.
And genuinely deep down, I got the vibe. No one said it outright, but I kind of all got the vibe that like a lot of her friends and family didn't actually like him very much.
No, I got that too.
Like at all. They
Yeah.
didn't outright come out like and say that.
Sure.
But they kind of alluded to, they all sort of had like this weird feeling about him forever. And one of them does mention, like, we understood Scott and like what he thought and how he felt based on what Laci told us because he didn't talk.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's very strange that you could be friends with people for so many years and like not even know them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
It's like weird.
It is weird.
So that's
it.
that. It was very interesting, and I do recommend watching it.
Yeah.
It is 3 episodes, but there is so much to cover in this case that it truly is necessary. I didn't feel like there was a lot of like fluff.
No, not at all.
And I would recommend watching it if you are interested in learning more about it because it does cover literally like everything. We did a summary cliff notes of it, but there's
a lot
in it.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram at
The Murder Mamas
and TikTok.
The Murder Mamas 2.
It's the number 2. And YouTube.
The Murder Mamas.
And email us at
themurdermamas@gmail.com.
Thanks.
Bye.